Okay, this video is about repairing those splash guards that get destroyed generally by those parking lot curb stops. And here we see one of my splash guards. Dodge actually calls this a closeout panel. Basically, it's just, like I said, a splash guard. I'm going to go through the disassembly now of this. I'm going to remove this closeout panel and another side splash guard. I'm removing this driver's side splash guard to gain some access to the area above the closeout panel so I can inspect that area. I'd never done this before and really didn't know what I was up against. So I removed the two 10mm bolts and the plastic push pin shown here in the photo. Here, with the driver's side splash guard removed, you can see the part of the transmission there. And here's the splash guard. And here I've placed blue painter's tape around the perimeter of the bumper cover to show where all the closeout panel fasteners are located. On the passenger side, there is a push pin at the leading edge of the wheel arch. I'll remove this with push pin pliers. It's fairly straightforward. Okay, so I pull out the button, the center section that's removed, and then I remove the body. There's another push pin in the same position on the driver's side of the car. I'll remove this with a trim panel tool. Again, fairly straightforward. I'm using that trim panel tool to pop up the center button, and once I've got that up, I can just remove the body. Then I'll use this motorized tool to remove the small bolts. I'm doing this from up above the car and I'm reaching underneath so that you can actually see what I'm doing here instead of blocking the camera view. Okay, so I'm continuing to remove these OEM screws. There are 9 total. I've only got 7 on my car because there's some damage to my my plastic splash shield. And anyway, these screws look pretty rough. They're the original screws. They're 8+ years old. I did, further out in the video, I did find some Napa screws, self-tapping screws, and some stainless steel washers that I used to replace these. But then after I had them in service for 6 to 8 months, they actually look worse than these OEM screws that are 8 years old. So I'm just going to be going back to these OEM screws. They're fairly pricey. I think they're about $10 each. I did look around online and I think I found them for cheapest price, $6.50 each, but I only need a couple, so it's not that bad. On the passenger side, I'll remove the 2 push pins that hold the fender liner to the closeout panel. And on the driver's side, I'll remove the same 2 push pins. I'll use the trim panel tool to do that. Alright, so I'm trying to pry up the center button on this push pin, and I'm using a trim panel removal tool to do that. It's got a notch in, kind of like a fork. There's a notch in the tool. So I've got the button up, and I can remove the body, and there it is. Now on to the next one. Just repeat the process using that trim panel tool to lift the center section, or that button. It's a little bit of a struggle. Got it out. It came out all the way. Then I removed the body. Next, there are 3 hex head fasteners that attach the rear of the closeout panel to the chassis directly beneath the radiator. I'll remove those fasteners with my socket wrench. Okay, I'm removing these radiator support screws, bolts rather, and they have a concave style washer on them, a cupped style of washer. Anyway, I tried to find part numbers for these bolts. Went to the dealership, they couldn't find them, and I looked online. I could not find the part numbers for these. Later on in the video, I have described the specifications of these bolts, the type of fastener they are, and the thread pitch and the length of the threads. So should be able to find a bolt and a washer, say for example at Ace Hardware, or perhaps Home Depot, more than likely Ace Hardware, or worst case the junkyard. I'm taking out the third one, and there it is. Here is the closeout panel removed from the car. Note all of the fastener types and their locations. The red arrows point to the 3 10mm hex bolt locations. The green arrows point to the 9 7mm small hex bolt locations. And the blue arrows point to the 6 pushpin locations. Note, in the closeout panel there are 2 torn out sections where 2 of the 7mm small hex bolts go. I did not fix that this time, but in the future when I have this apart again, I'll try some plastic welding to see if I can fix these. On the bottom of the wheel fender liner, it can be seen in red, in the red rectangle, where the plastic has been scratched by those parking lot curb stops over the years. Here I've pulled into a parking spot, and there's no problem so far. And here I've pulled further forward, and the bottom edge of my fender liner is touching the curb stop. The curb stop is pushing on the fender liner edge, and damage is imminent. Note the blue circle. If I pull forward any further, damage will occur. Okay, now it's reassembly time. First, I'm installing the 9 7mm small bolts. Actually, it's only going to be 7 because of those 2 sections in my plastic closeout panel that are torn out. And I'm just running them in gently with the motorized driver, being careful not to strip them out. You may be able to see the stainless steel washer beneath the screw/washer combo. The black screw and the black washer are made together. That black washer will not come off. These are replacements that I found online, and the washer, that black washer, is not quite the diameter. It's a smaller diameter than the original OEM part. So I found these other stainless steel washers to also put on the screw to increase that washer width so it's the same as the OEM part. These are Napa self-tapping screws, and the stainless steel washers I got from Ace Hardware. After I used these for about 6 to 8 months, they were actually in worse condition than the original OEM fasteners that were 8+ years old. So I think I'm going to be converting back to the OEM fasteners. I'm going to have to buy a couple of them at $10 to $6.50 each. If I were forced to use these Napa fasteners, I think what I would do would be to wash them down with a brake clean and then spray paint them. Possibly put a primer coat on first and then spray paint them just to give them some more durability. Now I'm installing the 3 10mm bolts to the frame beneath the radiator. I'm just snugging these in with my socket wrench. Not too tight because the closeout panel is plastic. It'd probably be easily destroyed if those bolts are put in too tight. Okay, I'm installing the second of 3 of the bolts that go into the radiator support. I'm just running that one in. Then I'm going to snug it down. Not too much torque here. And then for the third and final bolt, run that in and snug it down. Then I'm installing the 2 push pins that hold the fender liner to the closeout panel on the passenger side of the car. I've got the 2 push pins in. Got to push down that center button to lock them in place. Got that one pushed in. Now that one. Next to be reinstalled is the driver's side splash guard. First, the 2 10mm hex bolts are installed by hand tightened. Then the push pin that holds the splash guard to the fender liner is installed. Then the 2 push pins that hold the fender liner to the closeout panel are installed. Then the 2 10mm splash guard bolts are tightened. Next, the passenger side wheel arch push pin is installed. And then the driver's side push pin is installed. Okay, I'm going to talk about fasteners now. Push pins I like to use are shown here. They are higher quality and last longer than the super cheapy ones that can be found online. I'll put links in the description for parts. The 7mm small hex bolts are shown here. I also used a stainless steel washer on the 7mm bolts because the washer that came on the 7mm bolts was too small, and I wanted to maintain the same washer diameter that was on the OEM bolts. These clip nuts were a little smaller than the OEM part, but they worked fine. And FYI, the OEM clip nut has the dimensions shown in my sketch here, if you want to find an exact match for those. These three larger 10mm hex head bolts had these specs. Threads are metric, M6 by 1.0. Thread diameter is 5.90mm, hence the M6 designation. And the washer is a cupped 17.73 millimeters in diameter. The thread length, including the unthreaded tip, is 14 millimeters, and the length of the threaded section only is 11.75 millimeters. Of the three bolts used, the two larger bolts are shown here side by side. The one on the left is the one used for the driver's side splash panel, and the one on the right is used to hold the closeout panel to the radiator support beam. The driver's side splash guard panel appears to have an inverted cup washer, and the radiator support beam bolt it's either flat or it's cupped in the other direction. I don't remember which. So here everything is again all nicely tucked away like it's supposed to be. Okay, I'm going to go over all of the splash shields that are on this car for completeness. So here, looking directly straight ahead, is the passenger side splash shield. And then in the wheel well, there is a plastic splash shield that goes, or wheel liner that goes all the way around the interior of the wheel well. It's in two pieces. So that's all of that. Then let's go look at the other side. So on the other side, there's the same kind of setup. Directly ahead is a splash shield. I think that's actually called engine access cover, because that's where you can access the pulleys, the idler pulleys, the water pump, the belt tensioner. It gives access. It's still tied up in there. So, and again, in the wheel well, fender liner, plastic fender liner, we see goes all the way around the inside of that wheel well. It's in two pieces. So the only other part is the engine closeout cover, which is underneath. If you found this video helpful or entertaining, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll put parts links in the description. Thank you for watching.